Very difficult for anyone to ever work with Blake Lively ever again.
How big of a black eye did they get? Like, not how big of a black guy did he get?
Gotcha.
How big of a black
Let me tell you about that
eye
story,
did they get?
Pat.
What do you mean by that?
Like, meaning, how bad is this on their reputation?
On their reputations?
Ryan and Blake?
Terrible. I mean, now other footage is coming out of Blake Lively admitting, hey, when I get involved with projects, they hire me as the actress, and sometimes I don't really tell them, but I actually want to come in and I want to rewrite it, and I want to be a producer, and I want to do all of these things. She's literally admitted all of this blatantly.
Blake Lively, America Ferrara kills it as Carmen, Alexis Bledel, and Amber Tamblyn. It is also the film debut of our friend Blake Lively.
Nice.
Which she killed it. Did absolutely wonderful as Bridget.
Killed it. I might have been a little biased, but I thought Bridget's story was the most relatable and probably the most fun.
You thought it was the most relatable?
Yeah.
I was out on Bridget's story. I felt bad for Bridget.
How many times did we go to sporting camps in the summer?
Hey everyone. There is so much happening right now because Taylor Swift just dropped a brand new album and the internet cannot stop talking about it. The album is called Life of a Showgirl, and while it's already topping charts, it's also dividing her fan base in a big way. Some Swifties are absolutely obsessed, while others, not so much. Personally, I have mixed feelings. I listened to the entire album from start to finish, and even though I wouldn't call myself a hardcore Swiftie, I've been following Taylor's music for years. So when I say I'm torn, I mean it. Some of the songs feel really familiar, almost like echoes of past eras, but at the same time, it's upbeat, bright, and honestly, it's just nice to hear Taylor sounding genuinely happy in love. Now, here's where things get interesting. There's a track on the album called Cancelled, and a lot of fans believe it's about Blake Lively. Personally, I'm not so sure about that. The album was recorded during the spring and summer of 2024, long before Taylor and Blake's rumored falling out. The last time the two were spotted together was in October 2024, when Taylor, Blake, and their partners went out for dinner. Back then, Taylor and Travis were still dating, not yet engaged, and that dinner ended up being the final time anyone photographed them together. Since then, things have definitely shifted. There's been a lot of distance, especially after that lawsuit situation. You know, the one where those private text messages were leaked and Taylor got dragged into the whole legal mess. So naturally, fans started speculating, have Taylor and Blake reconciled behind the scenes? Honestly, I'll believe it when I see actual proof. And just to make things even more interesting, there's another layer. Travis Kelce and his brother dropped a New Heights podcast episode where they casually discussed the sisterhood of the traveling pants, the iconic movie Blake Lively starred in. The episode went live around October 16, 2024, right around the same time all of this drama started unfolding. So during that time, Blake and Taylor were absolutely friends, okay? They clearly still cared about each other. But here's where things get interesting. The New Heights podcast decided to release all of their bonus content that was previously only available to paying subscribers. They're uploading everything now to their YouTube channel, making it free for everyone. Because of that, a lot of people thought this was a new episode. But if you actually check the podcast website or look on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or wherever you listen, you'll see this specific episode was originally recorded on October 16th, 2024, and in that one, Travis and Jason literally say they love Blake Lively. Now, of course, TMZ jumped on that and started running headlines like, Travis and Jason Kelce still love Blake, friendship back on. And that's only adding more fuel to the speculation fire. Fans also noticed that Taylor wore a bracelet identical to the one Blake wore at the It Ends With Us premiere. But again, everything in this new album was finished back in spring and summer of 2024. She could have been wearing Blake's bracelet then, when they were still friends, or she might just have her own version of it. Either way, the music and all the artwork for this album were completed long before their fallout. The truth is, this type of content doesn't come together overnight. Taylor has said herself that everything was produced and finalized more than a year ago, back when her friendship with Blake was still solid. So when people ask if Blake and Taylor are still friends, honestly, I just don't know. And I won't believe it until I actually see them together again. Would I judge Taylor negatively if she forgave Blake? Not necessarily, but it would definitely be hard to come back from everything that's happened, especially after Blake's lawsuit, the false claims, and how Taylor got dragged into all that publicity mess. Now, the Daily Mail, which, let's be honest, often acts like a Leslie Sloan mouthpiece, keeps reporting that the two have had some conversations and that forgiveness has been given. but that same line has been floating around for months. Supposedly they're rebuilding trust, but it doesn't sound like they're anywhere near being best friends again. And until I see a real photo, video, anything of them together, while I'm not buying it, but honestly, that's what keeps everyone invested. The mystery. The speculation, though, will they, won't they, of this friendship. And I think the most revealing part in all of this is that, despite everything, Taylor still refuses to pick a side. Because if you think about it, when you're truly close to someone, and you see them getting attacked, wouldn't you defend them? Wouldn't you speak up? Taylor supported people before. She stood by Kesha when she needed it most. Taylor's been a victim herself, so if she genuinely believed Blake, she'd show it. But she hasn't. And that silence says everything. If she has really reconnected with Blake, honestly, I'd judge that negatively. It would make me question Taylor's judgment when it comes to friendships, especially after everything that's come out. Now, while all that PR chaos and fan speculation are swirling online, the courtroom side of things has been moving forward, and the judge just made a couple of interesting rulings that could seriously affect the case. Here's what happened. The court was juggling two key motions, one for judgment on the pleadings and one for summary judgment. Instead of rescheduling or dismissing anything, the judge decided to stick to his original calendar. He basically said, look, my clerks are working on specific cases and I'm not changing my timeline. So instead, he told Blake and Justin, I'll review both motions together. Blake, you can respond to both on November 19th. That's the new deadline. He denied Blake's request for extra time, saying she didn't have valid reasons to delay, but to keep things organized. He's letting her file both responses on the same day, and when that happens, he'll review both motions side by side. This gives the judge two clear options to dismiss Blake's case, and from the way he worded things, it kind of sounded like some of the California-based claims might get tossed. He even hinted that he wanted time to focus on what remains after those rulings, which is usually a sign that at least part of the case won't survive. So here's the reality. People online think he's favoring Blake, but I really don't see it that way. If anything, this setup actually puts more pressure on her. She now has to prepare two major legal responses, one defending the pleadings and one defending the facts, at the exact same time. And those arguments could end up contradicting each other. That's a brutal position to be in, because when the judge sits down to review both, he'll have two separate pathways to dismiss her claims entirely. And in federal court, especially with civil cases, judges stick tight to their schedules. Criminal cases take priority because of the constitutional right to a speedy trial, so civil matters like this one are expected to move efficiently. The judge clearly doesn't want delays, so no, I don't think he's siding with Blake. I think he's tightening the timeline, and that's not great news for her legal team. Another major setback for Blake is that she's now been caught trying to hide evidence, and the judge wasn't having it. Here's what's going on. There's a new federal court policy where sealed documents are no longer visible on the public docket. That means if something's sealed, you'll just see a placeholder, not the actual document. And even when it's later unsealed, it doesn't automatically pop back up online. The idea is to prevent mistakes, like when sealed documents accidentally get leaked. But here's the catch. If those same documents are referenced in another filing later on, they can't stay sealed. And that's exactly what's happening. Here, Blake has been fighting hard to keep two key pieces of evidence completely secret, and she just lost that fight. The first is a declaration from one of her witnesses who accused Justin Baldoni of verbal abuse and making them feel uncomfortable. The judge ruled that this declaration has to become public. In his decision, he quoted Blake's own argument, where she claimed that the declarant's privacy interests outweigh any presumption of public access, and that there's no public interest in exposing the declarant to online scrutiny. Basically, she was saying, leave this person anonymous for their own protection. But Wayfarer, Justin's side, pushed back hard. They argued that Blake's team selectively quoted the audio recordings in their filings, and that the full recordings needed to be made public for context and accuracy. And the judge agreed. He said that because these recordings and declarations are tied to major motions, including Blake's requests for sanctions, damages, and even punitive fees, the public has a right to access them. In his words, Lively's motion seeks fees, costs, and punitive damages against the Wayfarer parties. This is exactly the type of motion to which a strong presumption of public access applies. The privacy interest identified here, the declarant's identity, is insufficient to overcome that presumption. And then he took it even further. He said that while he's aware of the media-driven narrative around this case, the declarant's identity isn't the kind of private information the courts protect, like medical data or information about minors. In other words, if you willingly enter the case, make accusations, and submit declarations, that's public record territory. He also pointed out that preventing the release of the full audio would deny the other parties a fair opportunity to respond. And since Blake's team only quoted selective parts of that recording, it would be unfair to keep the rest hidden. Wayfarer even offered a compromise to unseal the audio without revealing the person's name. But the judge shot that down too, saying that the content itself makes the identity obvious. So, everything gets unsealed, and honestly that's huge, because it stops Blake from cherry-picking bits and pieces of a larger conversation to push her own narrative. Once that full audio is out, it's going to show context, and that context might not make Justin look nearly as bad as Blake's filings implied. And we've seen this pattern before. Blake has a long history of making things sound catastrophic when they're not. She's done it in interviews, filings, and PR statements. Remember when she claimed she was the target of a smear campaign? Yeah, turns out she's the one doing most of the smearing. He's also going to unseal parts of a deposition, because apparently no one else showed up to court to request that it remain sealed. However, details about Jed Wallace's medical condition will stay confidential, and here's the part that honestly made me laugh. Remember how I said Blake wanted to keep her CRD complaint sealed and filed it under seal? Well, here's what the judge said. Wayfarer's motion on August 12th seeks to seal Exhibits 1 and 2, filed in support of its motion for judgment on the pleadings. Exhibit 1 is an agreement between Blake Lively Inc. and the film It Ends With Us, containing confidential and sensitive information. Exhibit 2 is a complaint and right to sue letter filed with the California Civil Rights Division. However, the Wayfarer party's letter does not explain in any meaningful way why this information is sensitive or should remain sealed. Since these documents were submitted with a dispositive motion, there's a strong presumption of public access. In short, the judge is calling them out. He's basically saying, like, Blake, you already made this public. Why are you pretending it's private now? So both Blake and Wayfarer now have to explain to the court why they want the CRD complaint to stay sealed and justify the secrecy. On top of that, Blake's attempt to hide the declarant's identity and selectively quote from an audio clip has been rejected. That means at some point, that material, including the identity of the person who accused Justin Baldoni of verbal abuse and the full context of that recording, will come out. Now, when something is unsealed, you can't just click and download it from the online docket. You have to go through the court directly. But eventually it'll become public. And when it does, we'll finally see the full picture. My prediction? Once the full audio and context are revealed, it'll probably be clear that what was said wasn't at all what Blake claimed it was. If I've learned anything about her, or her lawyers, it's that they have a very creative relationship with context. They present things in a way that looks good for them. But when you see the whole story, you realize how misleading it was. It's the same energy as when Blake accused me of being part of a smear campaign paid for by Baldoni, with zero evidence. She knew she was crossing a line, so that's where things stand for now. If the court does unseal those documents and I can get access, we'll go through everything together. As for Taylor and Blake, I'm still on the fence. Personally, I don't think Taylor's album Cancelled is about Blake. It feels broader, about everyone, really. And while Taylor's clearly happy and in love with Travis, which makes me genuinely happy for her, if she ever decides to reconcile with Blake, well, I'll judge. Harshly. For now, the headline is simple. Blake Lively's attempt to hide evidence? Denied. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new update. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye!